Okun's law is a useful tool for policymakers in times when we don't have all of the information. And this is not a law. I actually hate that it's called a law because it's not written in stone. It's a rule of thumb. It's debatable, but it does give you a ballpark range for understanding what's going on in the economy. When we're in a recession, we're thinking that our output here is below potential output, right? So we have some long run potential output, and it's really important that you start to think about business cycle fluctuations in this way. Long run potential output, that's growing at say 3% per year. But sometimes output dips below the long run rate of output, and we have a positive output gap. And sometimes when the economy is growing like crazy, we're producing at a rate that's above the long run sustainable rate of production. And in those time periods, we would say that we have a negative output gap. We're producing more than we can sustain in the long run. Our output gap is the difference between potential long run potential output and our actual output. And you can see that that's going to be positive during times of recession and negative during times of expansion. And we want to think about, during this recession, how big is our output gap? Then we can start to talk about if the government can do something to try to fill in the gap in order to lessen the severity of the recession. So first question then is, how big is the output gap? And we have this Okun's law kind of rule of thumb, really rough estimate for calculating our output gap, or how much below potential output we're operating. For every percentage point in cyclical unemployment, we would expect to see a 2% increase in the output gap, 2 percentage point increase in the output gap. Let's go through an example to see how this would work. This is from the last recession. In 2011, we had unemployment at 9%. And 6% natural unemployment rate. We can calculate our long-run natural unemployment rate by looking at the rate at which people quit their job and the rate at which people are being fired. That's frictional unemployment, where people are changing jobs, shifting in and out of jobs, and that type of unemployment is natural and healthy for our labor markets. So what we want to look at when we're looking at cyclical unemployment here is the difference between our actual unemployment rate during a recession and what we would consider the natural rate of unemployment. And so here, this is like a really easy calculation, right? We would estimate that cyclical unemployment is about 3%, 3 percentage points of cyclical unemployment. All right, so now how do we calculate our output gap? Our output gap is going to be 2 times our cyclical unemployment, so that gives me a 6% output gap. That means that the economy was perhaps operating at a level that was 6% below potential output. And if we know that real GDP at that time period was about $15 trillion, then we can back out the size in dollars of the output gap. How much are we missing from our long-run growth potential? Again, I just want to emphasize that this is a very rough estimate. We are all interested in how bad is it right now. That's the first question we have when we enter a recession. And so we have some ways of trying to estimate how bad it is. before we have all the data. Of course, in hindsight, 2 years from now, we'll look back and we'll know a lot more than we do at this point in time, but it will be too late to take any action to reduce the business cycle fluctuation. Okay, that's a little overview of what we know about short-run fluctuations. In the coming videos, what we're going to do is develop a model to describe why short-run fluctuations occur. And then we're going to use that model to help us conceptualize how to respond in terms of both monetary and fiscal policy.